Hello and welcome to TV Toastmasters. I'd like to call to order our Thursday, October 3rd meeting of Club 9523. I'd like to say hello to my fellow Toastmasters, our guests in the audience, Jennifer Lovell, and specifically those of you looking in from home. If you'd like to learn more about TV Toastmasters, you can log on to www.tvtoastmasters.com. You're always welcome to come join us at our meetings, but please stay tuned and check us out. We've got a great meeting in store for you this evening. We have two of our most experienced speakers that will come up to the lectern and speak. And we also have some other things in store. We have table topics. And then the second half of the meeting will be the evaluation period. And that's the most important part of our meeting because it allows our speakers to get feedback and helps them to grow to become better speakers and communicators. Without further ado, I am also the Toastmaster for this evening. And I would like to start by welcoming our grammarian up to the lectern. Our grammarian will give us the word of the day. He's going to encourage us to use that during our speaking this evening. And he will also be tracking our grammarian mistakes, our crutch words, our ahs and ums, and just to help create a better awareness of our speaking. So please, Mr. Rick Barron.
Thank you, Michelle. I selected a very appropriate word of the day today. Today's word of the day is glossophobia. Glossophobia is speech anxiety or fear of public speaking, which in many cases is something that very many of us and you out there have. I listed some of the symptoms down here. I don't know that it'll get a chance to zoom in. Which camera are we on? Are we on this camera here? You can zoom in and see some of the symptoms. If you experience anxiety, if you avoid situations where you have to speak, or maybe you have actual physical symptoms associated with this fear, you are probably glossophobic. I will leave this up here to remind you when you come to the lectern to try to use the word glossophobia when you're up here speaking. Michelle?
Thank you, Rick. Yes, glossophobia. I had that severely when I started Toastmasters about 4 years ago. And every now and again I get a few of the symptoms, but I can tell you I no longer shake and get shortness of breath, and it's all because of my experiences at Toastmasters. So please try to use that word today in your speaking. Next I'm going to ask Jean Ho to come up. Jean was so courteous and willing to jump in last minute as our table topics master. And Jean will be giving us impromptu questions. That'll help us to practice our speaking on the spot when our boss puts us in the hot seat. This is exactly what the purpose of table topics is to practice their impromptu speaking. So Jean will come up. She will give a question that is not, and then I guess the person she's going to call to the lectern is not aware of that, and then she will call them up, and you'll have 1 to 2 minutes to respond. Thank you, Jean.
Good evening. I am thinking about the holidays already because the decorations are out, fall is in the season, and strangely enough, we already have Christmas decorations out when we haven't even started Halloween. So just so we get in the spirit of things before the holidays actually kicks in, I was wondering about how people actually plan their Halloween day and see how, if they still do trick-or-treating. I don't see much trick-or-treating around anymore like I used to when I was a kid. So I was wondering, Michelle, what kind of plans do you have on Halloween?
Thank you, Jean. Halloween. Well, this year I'm going to turn out my lights and hide the candy. No, I'm just joking. Actually, in my neighborhood, I don't get any trick-or-treaters. I live in a neighborhood where there's only houses on one side of the street. So it doesn't make, and it's a dead end. So it's about, I would say, a mile long, and it's a dead end. So it doesn't make very much sense for trick-or-treaters because if you walk all the way down, you can't hit houses on the way back. So I typically, on Halloween, will go over to my sister's house, and my niece always wants me to walk her around versus my sister. I think it's because I let her run and I let her eat half the candy while she's walking around and so forth. So I will spend my Halloween either walking around with my niece, and sometimes on occasions she's getting at that age where she wants to walk around with her friends on her own. So I might be stuck sitting next to my sister handing out candy. But that's what I will do this Halloween.
That kind of sounds like my night too, except I won't be giving out candy. I turn off the lights and have the candy for myself and and maybe watch a movie. But I have to say one of my favorite Halloween memories, though, I recall is having to go to a friend's place, and we had trick-or-treats that her mother served, and they had a bonfire there. Of course, I could never understand the bonfire bit, but I thought it was kind of neat because her parents were really into the trick-and-treating stuff. They had their house decorated with the tattered curtains, and they had their front yard decorated with gravestones and what have you. And then usually, you know, they have some kind of game like hide or seek in the dark, something scary, and then we would have some snacks, and then we'll just go ahead and watch a scary movie, and that's how we end our evening. So I was wondering, Carol, do you have any favorite Halloween memories?
Carol?
Yes, I do. A favorite Halloween memory. I can remember my sister had a party down in our basement, and Mother read this story, and Diego already heard this last night because I told this at our meeting last night. She would read the story about the brains. I don't know if they had taken a person apart or what they had done, but they had the brains, and she had cold, wet spaghetti that you passed around. You could feel their brains. And then she talked about the eyeballs, and those were peeled grapes that you could feel this. And it was a very tactile presentation of this story the Halloween story that was spooky. I thought that was a lot of fun, and I liked the costume. This wasn't at the same time, but I liked the costumes that I had for Halloween, where I was this funny-looking person. I had a yardstick with a pillowcase over it and cut out so I could see, and the pillowcase went all the way down to my waist, and I had a coat tucked around my waist, buttoned, and I had rubber gloves, black rubber gloves, tied to the bottom, pinned to the bottom of the sleeve so they dragged the ground. And I looked like this weird person. I wanted to recreate this, but I don't know if I could do that exact same thing. But that was my favorite, where I was this great big head with these little tiny feet, and I thought that was a lot of fun. Madam Topics Master. Oh, Mr. Madam Topics Master. Wrong one. Okay.
It's funny that you mentioned the movie as to what you were watching. I myself have my favorite, well, I can't say favorite. I mean, horror movies are not my favorite movies, but I do have one I really enjoyed that wasn't so gory. I don't know if you heard of it. It's called It, and it was a story written by Stephen King. Basically, it was a clown that scared or kidnapped children. I know it sounds kind of, you know, it sounds kind of morbid, but it's the way they presented it, that it didn't go into all that gore and guts and have you. But in the story, it was circled around a group of friends that came back to a small town where the horror was occurring, or where they couldn't find out what was happening, why these children were disappearing. And somehow they got called back, and one of them had a wife who went after them and got caught by this clown and ended up having claustrophobia, because when they found her, she just didn't say anything. She just seemed like she had her fear of speaking. So anyway, that was one of the movies that I recall that I really enjoyed. It wasn't so gory and scary. So I was wondering, Jennifer, did you have a favorite movie or story from Halloween that maybe you could have told your kids, or maybe you have one of your own?
Hi, my name's Jennifer, and this is my first time here at Toastmasters, first time up at the, what do you call it?
Lectern.
What is it, lectern? Okay, lectern. So, and I will, one, say I use the word a lot. I have I am the queen of glossophobia. So, bear with me. But as far as my favorite Halloween movie or something, as soon as you started to talk about, Halloween and movie, the first thought that came to my mind was also it, because it has, I watched that when I was probably 13 with a friend of mine, and it was the night before Halloween, and it was the first time I've ever watched anything like that, and I was probably preteen. And it was one of the most scariest things I have ever seen. And ever since then, I've had this awful fear of clowns. I can't go to the circus. I have 2 children who are soon to be 5 and soon to be 9. And I take them to the circus because they like it. The whole time I'm there, a clown's walking by, and I'm, I don't put my hand up, but it has created this fear inside of me that I just can't really get over. So, even my uncle, even today, actually sent me a picture, and he's like, I want to show you and they live down in Kentucky, I want to show you my new Halloween outfit. I thought that you'd really like it. And I was like, oh, okay, and he's texting me. And then the next picture was him with his arms way up in the air, this huge clown outfit on, and I was like, that is not a good outfit, so, but yeah, when you say Halloween and movie, and that was the first thing that came to my mind, so.
Well, now that let's hope I've gotten everybody in the spirit of the season, I hope you all have a safe and happy Halloween. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Cable Topics Master. Well, now we're going to move on to the speaking portion of our meeting. And our first speaker this evening definitely does not have any signs of glossophobia when I hear him speak. Rick is one of our more experienced Toastmasters. Rick is an Advanced Communicator Bronze and an Advanced Leader Silver. And let me tell you a little bit about Rick. He was dragged to TV Toastmasters Open House by his wife, and now serves as the VP of Public Relations. And by the way, his wife has left the club shortly after Rick joined. Rick recently celebrated his 5th anniversary as a member of TV Toastmasters and is looking forward to many more. Rick is going to be giving us a speech tonight from the Public Relations Manual. It's speech number 3. It's regarding goodwill. It's a 5 to 7 minute speech. Rick's speech is titled Exiting the 74% Club. Please welcome Rick Barron, Exiting the 74% Club.
Thank you, Michelle. You are a member of one of the clubs in the United States that probably has more members who don't know they're in the club than any club in the country. That club is the Glossophobia Club. The National Institute of Mental Health has estimated that 74% of Americans have some form of speech anxiety or fear of public speaking. 74%. If you're sitting in here, or watching from out there, and you're wondering, what could I do to overcome my fear? That's exactly the topic of my speech today. Why would you want to exit this club? Why get more comfortable in front of an audience? You may want to advance your career. You may want to improve a relationship. Or you may just want to be more fun in social situations. All great reasons to overcome that fear of public speaking. How do you do it? I don't know about you, but the only way that I get better doing anything, practice, practice, practice. You don't get better playing golf sitting on the couch. You don't get better swimming by reading a book. Each and every activity requires that you practice, and the same is true to overcome your glossophobia. Practice is required. And if you're wondering, where can I practice in a safe environment? Come check us out at TV Toastmasters. Great opportunity for you to watch and potentially participate in a safe environment to improve your skills. I do have a few tips that I'd like to share with you that you may not get unless you come here to Toastmasters. The first tip is, have something to say. Don't just come up to the lectern and babble. We need you to have a topic and to say something of importance and relevance when you're giving a prepared speech or presentation. So in other words, do your homework. The second thing, many people like to have notes. If you're going to use notes or note cards, my suggestion is that you use big print, double spacing, and a large footer on the bottom of the page. So that way you can glance down at your notes without having to read them. And as you're going through your notes, just move the page from side to side rather than flipping the page, because that creates a distraction. Did you notice what I did before I came up? I was waiting over there in the wings until I was called. What that allows me to do is to be in control, to be prepared, and to be ready to walk up here rather than sitting in my seat and having to step over this or drop that. So for me, what works really well is to stand over there and wait until I'm called, rather than sitting out there and potentially being distracted on my way up here to the lectern. Make sure that your phone is off, and gentlemen, take the change out of your pocket. Any nervous habit, spinning the ring, playing with your hair, just be conscious of those things and eliminate those distractions so you don't have them to fall back on. What else did I do when I walked up here? I smiled. Always start with a nice smile and pause before you start to show the audience that you're in control. Have a powerful opening, something that really grabs people, not, I'm just here to tell you about the topic that they said I should, no. Powerful opening to grab the audience, to show them again that you're in control. And tell stories. It's so much easier to speak in public just like you do a normal conversation, relating stories about what happened over the weekend, what you did on your vacation, the favorite movie that you like, your favorite costume. All we do is tell stories here at Toastmasters, and we just call them speeches. That's how it works. If you want to come visit us on TV Toastmasters, here's a few additional tips that you might want to consider. The first, make a good first impression. Dress to impress. You only get a few seconds for somebody to look at you and to make an opinion. So make sure that you're dressed to give someone that opinion that you want them to have. In addition, solid colors work best so that there's not a lot of waviness and distraction. Treat the camera like another audience member and speak to the camera, allowing the director to do their job. You do your job, let the director do their job. Pick a camera, have a conversation with it, just like you would do with someone in the audience. In addition, pause when complete, because they have to edit the tape, and it makes it a lot easier to chop if you give them a spot to chop. The 74% Club. So many of you and of us have been members, but there's no need. You can exit the 74% Club gracefully by taking advantage of a few of the tips that I've provided, but my suggestion is to come join us at Toastmasters and practice, practice, practice. Michelle?
Thank you, Rick. As always, an inspiring speech. I'm glad I'm no longer a member of the 74% Club. And to reiterate what Rick said, we would love to have you join us at TV Toastmasters to work on becoming a non-member of the 74% Club.
Name an effective political leader in history who couldn't speak well. There aren't any.
Because when it comes to a disease,
Freedom requires leadership, and leadership requires oratory. You have to speak to be heard.
I have a dream.
It's all about personal growth and guts.
Never give in. Never, never, never.
We're now going to move on to our second speaker of the evening. She's going to be giving a speech out of the Competent Communication Manual. Speech number 7, research your topic. It will be 5 to 7 minutes. Have you ever been at a loss for words when you have to introduce a speaker? 17 years ago, our next speaker suffered a loss for words the first time she was Toastmaster for the day. She has engaged in the study and research of creating 45-second introductions that connect the speaker to the audience and capture their interest in the topic. You be the judge as to whether the introduction aroused your interest in the topic she is about to share. Help me welcome distinguished Toastmaster Cubed, Carol Cormelink. Create curiosity when introducing the speaker. Carol Cormelink, create curiosity when introducing the speaker.
I'm going to be introducing the next speaker. John Smith is a highly accomplished financial services professional. He started into business at age 25 and within 3 years was a President's Council qualifier. He has been a leading producer for our company for the last 17 years. At that time, he has built 2 successful agencies, and the sales program his team created has improved the annual revenues of our firm 22% every year for the past decade. Please help me welcome Mr. Smith. That is the typical introduction. There's nothing the matter with that introduction, but the difference between this introduction of Mr. Smith and the introduction of my speech was that this is I-centered. My speech introduction was audience-centered. I asked you a question, something that you could relate to. Have you ever been at a loss for words when you were a Toastmaster? Craig Valentine is the world champion of public speaking, and he suggests the following 4 steps to create a skilled introduction. Number 1, you make your first sentence about the audience, which is what I did with my speech. And today, the gal did a speech on remembering names, and she said, were you ever someplace where you just met someone and they came back to talk to you and you couldn't remember their name. You just met them and you couldn't remember their name. And she said, at a party it may not be that important, but if it were at a business meeting and this was a client, it would make a big difference. You might lose a sale because you didn't remember that person. And she said, when I first visited Toastmasters 20 years ago, they came up and the guy shook her hand and greeted her. At the next meeting, he introduced himself as if he'd never seen her before. So he heard without listening. And it's very important. So she gave a lot of tips on how to help you remember people's names, how you can make the I can't even say that word, whatever that is, the initials create something. But Greg Valentine says, make the first sentence about the audience, make a promise of a benefit they will receive. After you hear my speech tonight about creating introductions, you will be able to create your next introduction without having a boring one like this. It's all about the person, because you probably don't even remember where I said something. Is it possible that you could become a top producer despite no sales background? Our next speaker did this, and even if he failed miserably and was washed out of the business before age 27, he proves that, yes, you too can overcome your struggles and succeed in this business. And he has used the processes and tools you're about to learn to achieve President Council 17 times. That gives you a little something. You can relate more to that, because this other speech, you may say, oh yeah, that's impressive, but I could never do that. Well, when you explain it the way the second introduction, which was audience-centered, you may be able to relate to that more. So you want to focus on the audience, and then you use only your relevant credentials. You don't need to add anything. I don't need to tell you about that I went to Alaska in my introduction. It has nothing to do with creating curiosity when you introduce the next speaker. Whereas having researched the topic and read how to make better introductions, that is pertinent to my speech tonight. And then whenever possible, you turn everything about me into something about the audience. I was trying to think of another good introduction that I had in mind, but it's zipped out of my mind already. So the focus clearly is on the audience, and by making it with the first speaker making a reference to his early struggles, all of us have had struggles. The other lady today, the other one, I just thought of it. She gave a speech on fail forward to success. Very good speeches, both of those. They were both encouraging that no matter how bad you may do for your first try up here at the lectern, it can only go up. You will get better and better as your confidence improves. So try this with your next speech, and Rick had a very good introduction with his today. So create curiosity when introducing the next speaker. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Carol. So it sounds like you had glossophobia the very first time you were Toastmaster of the day, but you no longer have that.
All the education in the world won't help you get ahead in life if you can't express your ideas effectively. Every day, competition for advancement gets tougher and tougher. You need an edge. A Toastmasters Club can give you that edge. A low-cost learning experience for men and women. Toastmasters gives you the confidence to express your ideas to anyone. Get the Toastmasters edge.
We are now going to transition to the evaluation portion of our meeting. It's an extremely important part of our meeting because it allows our speakers to gain feedback on their presentations as well as their impromptu speaking today. Of course, I can't do that on my own, so I have to have Mr. General Evaluator, Steve Aaronholz, who will have a team of folks that will help with the evaluation portion of the meeting. So I'd like to introduce Steve, who will share who his team is and give a little bit of an explanation of what he's going to do. So Steve.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, those in the audience, our guests looking in from home, and Jennifer, our guest here today. As Michelle mentioned, the evaluation portion of our meeting is where we will be providing feedback to the speakers that you heard today presenting their prepared speeches. After each individual speaker's evaluation has been completed, I'm going to call on our grammarian and counter who will give us some perspective on how well we used the English language today, as well as if we have used the term glossophobia, which was our word of the day. We'll follow that up with our timers evaluation, because part of Toastmasters is that we stay on time. We get used to speaking in a certain time allocation that we've been given for each speaking role. The conclusion of the evaluation portion of the meeting will be done by myself as the general evaluator. I'll be giving an overview of my perspective of our meeting, as well as providing a few comments to the people who give the speakers' evaluations. Our first evaluator, who is going to be giving us her evaluation on Rick Barron's speech, is Carol Cormeling. Help me welcome Carol.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and our Toastmasters at home viewing here, and our most welcome guest. Rick, fantastic speech. Even the word of the day, everything, it was a good marriage with the word of the day, glossophobia, and the title of your speech. And you said I had glossophobia when, I might have had that when I was first Toastmaster. I've never had a fear of speaking in public. I just can't think quickly. So the audience reaction, I thought you could have heard a pin drop from across the street. I thought they were very intent on listening to what you had to say. And was Toastmaster mentioned throughout the speech? The whole speech was about Toastmasters. I was curious about your title at first because I thought, what Toastmaster club is only 74%? And then I realized it's the world. And it asked, did you do a service to the audience? To the audience, you did a service for the world to get out of that 74% afraid to speak their mind. You have no idea how many brilliant ideas have been lost in meetings because people were afraid to speak up. So thank you, Rick, for making it easier for us. And I liked one of the things that you said was, we just tell stories in Toastmasters. We call them speeches, but it's just stories. And that makes it more interesting. And I like that you showed how not to do things. It's easier to say, don't diggle the change in your pocket, but when he said, take it out, that gave you a definite example of how to overcome one nervous habit. If you don't have the change in your pocket, you're not going to be jingling it in your pocket. So I like that all the helpful hints to encourage the glossophobic. And I like that waiting in the wings to be there. A lot of people, as he said, they get up from their seat at the last minute. They've already should have been up here, but by the time they put everything down off their lap and walked up to the lectern, it was another few minutes, and we're in a time schedule here. And make sure the phone is off, which my phone is not off. I hope no one calls me because I don't answer it most of the time. And I like that you gave something that everyone could do. They don't have to be experienced. Smile the first thing when you get up here. And have a pause before your punchline, before the main thought. Pause. That makes that next thought very important. And I love that dress to impress. Sometimes I see people come in here and I think, were they going out to mow the grass or someplace? They certainly don't look like they're going to be on television. The one thing that I would have liked to have heard, your wife joined Toastmaster first, and then you joined, and then she left. I would have liked to hear why she left. You didn't mention that. And the only one thing that you did that I was uncomfortable with, pointing the finger. I would rather see you do a lesser, like you're condemning me, a lesser gesture like that. But that was the only thing, and as I said in the beginning, I didn't know where you were going with exiting the 74% club because I didn't know what Toastmaster club was only 74%. But you explained it all. It was all well. Well, I can't see that. Thank you, Diego. Madam, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Carol. And you even got gender right.
Yeah, you got to be able to see this.
Yeah, it's actually blocked by the back of the front chair. That's what the problem is. And Carol doesn't have the vantage point I have, so. Yeah, yeah. Our next evaluator is going to give us his assessment of Carol's speech. Help me welcome Rick Barron.
Thank you, Steve. It's always a pleasure to do this part of the meeting because I think this is the part of the meeting that provides the most benefit, where we have an opportunity to evaluate one another about what we did well and provide some areas of improvement so that the next time we can get up here and we can do even better. Carol's speech was focused on research, and she was supposed to pick a topic of importance, use numerous sources, and use facts, examples, and illustrations to make her point. She selected a topic that was very appropriate, not only to us, but I think to everyone out there in the community, because we're always introducing someone, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a child, whether it's a student, a colleague at work. It doesn't really matter. I don't know that a 45-second introduction might be appropriate at work, but it gives us all something to think about when we're doing that next introduction about how to really create curiosity to help people listen to what it is that we have to say next. And so the major lesson that I took away from Carol's speech was make your introduction part of the speech. Great way to help tie it all together and to improve the value that someone gets. Carol's very comfortable up here. She's very confident. She's got good eye contact. She uses good gestures, vocal variety. Not a lot to comment on there. There's one thing that I think, Carol, that you could have done to improve the speech. I know that you go to another Toastmasters meeting before you come here, but most other people probably do not. So you went into this discussion about today we did this and today we did that, and that may have been a little hard for other people to connect the dots. So that would have been, I think, the only suggestion. Explain, I go to another meeting, I attend another meeting, there were 3 speakers at those meetings, and I'm going to use some examples from those speakers today in my speech. That would have provided the backdrop for people. I think that would have helped connect those dots. Good speech, very appropriate topic, always fun and energetic to hear you speak. And as always, we look forward to hearing more from you, Carol. Thank you. Mr. General Evaluator.
Well, don't go too far because you're the grammarian and eye-counter. Do you have your materials with you?
Yes, I have it right here.
Okay, well, why don't Rick Barron's going to also be doing our grammarian and eye-counter report.
Thank you. Didn't have to go far.
No.
Kind of hard to wait in the wings when you're on stage already. Yeah. As grammarian and eye-counter, I have 2 roles. The first is to help us remember or count how many times people use the word of the day, glossophobia. And we do that to help people mix things up a bit, to learn a new vocabulary word, and to get in the habit of trying to use that vocabulary word in their speech. Something fun. In addition, what we find is when we count the verbal crutches that people have, they go down. Diego came into the meeting while we started taping, and I remember when Diego was here the very, very first time. Someone was counting all the ahs and ums, weren't they, Diego? And every time Diego's been here since, the number goes down and down and down and down. And by counting those, we get a chance to see how many there really are. I missed some of the table topics because I was busy thinking through my speech. But I did see that Jean used the word of the day, Jennifer used the word of the day, Michelle and Steve and Carol. I think everybody used the word of the day today. It was easy to work in based on what we were doing today. In terms of verbal crutches, Jean, I caught 1 so. That was it. Based on last month when you were here, when you gave your icebreaker and your impromptu table topics mastery up here, you're much further along, I think, than you really give yourself credit for. Jennifer, are you ready?
Ready.
You're ready. You said ah or was your favorite. I don't remember, but I only caught 2 ahs and 2 ums in your table topics response. The one that you were most clinging to was so. That was kind of the word that you used to kind of transition things, and it's very common. So I caught 2 ahs, 2 ums, 2 you knows, 3 so's, 2 buts, and 1 like. So if you add them up, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 was what I got. And I've had people up here that have had 30, 35, a lot. And so very good for the first time up here. Very, very good. Carol, I got 1 so from you as well. Michelle, Steve, absolutely nothing. I wasn't listening. Probably right. Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Rick. Did anyone catch Rick's 1 when he was giving his report on grammarian and ah counter? Now we're going to hear from our timer. Diego Martinez will give us his report on how we've done as far as staying within our time allocations for the different speaking roles. Help me welcome Diego Martinez.
Thank you, Steve. My job today is obviously to follow up about the timing in order to find out where we are in terms of objective timing everybody. And one of the things that I do is basically make sure that they're in the limit of the speech. So I was obviously with the lights telling what minutes. So what I did for the first one was Carol in the table topics was 1 minute 11 seconds, and Jennifer was only 1:29. The average was between 1 and 2. So you were in the same in the area. The speaker number 1 was Carol. Rick, and your speak was about 7 minutes and 13 seconds, so about an average. And the second speech was from Carol. She spoke about 4 minutes and 4:49, below the 7 minutes. That was pretty good. Evaluator number 1 was Carol again, and the time was from 2 to 3, and she spoke 3 minutes and 30 seconds. The evaluator number 2 was Rick, and you were speaking 2 minutes and 45 seconds. And the ad counter, which was your double duty, was 2 minutes and 51 seconds. So with that, I conclude my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Diego. Now it's my opportunity to provide some feedback to the participants here on our overall meeting today, as well as provide some feedback to Carol and Rick on their individual evaluations that they gave on each other's speeches. We started on time. We started about 6:30. It took us a little while to get set up today, but we are doing very well. Ah counter and grammarian Rick Barron, he did present the word of the day, and he also held it up, and he held it steady for the camera so that we could zoom in if I'd have had a camera person.
All right.
But I think I have a camera shot where you can still see this, so you can see how glossophobia is at least spelled. That's one of the challenges that we actually have doing a TV studio Toastmasters meeting. We have a few things that we have to worry about that normally aren't a consideration in a regular meeting where you're not videotaping it. Table Topics Master, Jean, good job as Table Topics Master. One thing I wanted to point out to you, and Jennifer, this is something that we try to get people to remember. We don't always remember it, but you always want to have someone in control of the lectern. So if you're the Table Topics Master, what you do is, after you pose your question, you call on the person that's going to come up and give their response. You wait until they've gotten up here, and then you shake their hand and you hand off the lectern. Similarly, when someone is done speaking up here, they wait until the Toastmaster, Table Topics Master, General Evaluator comes back and resumes control of the lectern. That's one of the things that you want to do. You want to maintain control of the lectern at all times. We see it happen. It's not like the world ends when it does happen, but you generally don't want to have the lectern standing up here just all by itself and nothing's going on. Jennifer, I wanted to congratulate you on your first table topic too. I think you did very well considering the fears that you've expressed about public speaking. You are off to a good start. I hope you'll come back and visit us again. Our speakers for today, Carol, one of the things that I wanted to remind you of that we talk about every so often here is not to make pounding gestures on the lectern because we have a fixed microphone that rests on the lectern. So any impact on the lectern is automatically transferred directly to the microphone. I know you know that. I just wanted to remind you, you still forget once in a while. It wasn't bad. I mean, you were subtle about it. So that's good. Good speech. I enjoyed your speech. Actually, I'm in the wrong order, too, because Rick Barron gave his speech first. So I'm going to talk to Rick a little bit about the 74% Club. And one of the things that you had in your speech was about looking at the camera. I know that for us, the signal lights on top of the cameras aren't always readily visible. And in fact, from up here, I can see tonight the way we have camera 3 angled, I can't see it at all. Because one of the things I found myself a little bit in a jam was you were talking about looking at the camera and engaging the camera, and you were looking at camera 1. And I had to get from camera 3 over to camera 2 to camera 1 to pick you up, so that I was actually looking back at you as you were talking about looking into the camera. Not a big deal, but it is something that we all sometimes can pay a little more attention to. And it's not that you have to look specifically at a camera all the time. You don't want to do that. You want to engage your studio audience as well. But you do want to look towards the camera periodically to just engage the audience at home that's looking in. As our technical director says, you want to cheat toward the camera every so often. Now I'm going to provide some feedback to our speech evaluators so Rick and Carol get some more feedback from me. You poor things. Carol, good job evaluating Rick's speech. You gave him a growth area. One of the things that you talked about, and I've heard this from other evaluators too, is about when we gesture toward the audience to not necessarily point, to use more of a sweeping motion. So that was really good. So you provided some specifics, and you spoke to Rick when you did your evaluation. Sometimes people are kind of looking around at everyone else, which it's okay to engage other people eye contact wise, but you're still providing feedback to the individual whose speech you're evaluating. Rick, I like that you covered what the objectives were of the speech. You also, and I have to read my scratching here. Well, if I remember it, I'll tell you later because I have got writing all over the place here. I thought your evaluation was really good. It was balanced. You provided some things for growth. And I know Carol is difficult to evaluate because she does a lot of things really well, just like she has a challenge evaluating you. But as you all saw, they each found one or two things that they could provide for consideration in future speeches that would be an improvement that they might want to consider. Counter and grammarian. Again, Rick, you did a good job providing the rationale for word of the day as well as counting the various crutches we use. So happens to be one of my favorites because that's how I manufacture these humongous run-on sentences. Diego, thank you for your timers report. One of the things that we do need to be aware of if we're the timer, and especially since you're sitting in the second row, which is farther back than the timer usually sits, they usually sit in the first row. Be sure that everyone that's up here speaking can see the lights. And unfortunately, we don't have a shelf to put on the back of the chair because that would be perfect. Then it would be right up there where everyone could see it. But having it on the seat, the back of the seat in front of it actually obscures its view. And as I mentioned, Carol is shorter than I am, if you haven't noticed. So she couldn't see the bottom lights. Overall, I think a very good meeting. I want to thank everyone who participated. You did a really good job. Our audience looking in from home, I hope that you've also enjoyed the 2 speeches that we heard as well as the table topics. And then you've gotten some insight into some of the things that we look for when we do our speech evaluations. I'm going to return the lectern back to our Vice President for Membership, Michelle Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. Well, this concludes our meeting, but before we go, I do want to mention one announcement. Our friends at the Cincinnati Communicators Toastmasters Club will be holding an open house on Thursday, November 7th, but the exciting thing is there's going to be a special presentation from Kay Fittis, Avoiding the Pitfalls of Gender Differences in the Workplace. Kay is a phenomenal speaker. We've had her at our meetings before, so I encourage you to come to this open house. We'll have the details on our website, or you can contact us on our website at www.tvtoastmasters.com to find out more details. This concludes our October 3rd meeting. We hope those looking at home would be encouraged to come join us. We meet at 7850 5 Mile Road at the Anderson Community Television Studio, the first Thursday of the month at 6 p.m. and the third Saturday of the month at 9 a.m. So please join us. I'd like to say thank you to our guest, Jennifer, for joining us, and Diego as well, and to my fellow Toastmasters. Have a great week.